All right, so are you ready to dive deep into how your thoughts can actually really impact your health?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay, so today we're going to be checking out this YouTube video by Dr. Joe Dispenza, who's this pretty well-known guy who's done a ton of research on this whole mind-body connection thing.
Yeah, he's got some pretty interesting ideas.
Yeah, so basically we're going to try to break down his main points and see what it all means for you. How can we actually use this stuff to feel better?
I think people are really starting to understand how important this connection is.
Totally. And Dr. Dispenza really stresses how stress, like the kind we don't even realize we're carrying around, can really mess with our bodies.
Yeah, for sure. Stress is a huge factor.
Okay, so he starts out by talking about these three different types of stress, right? He calls them physical, chemical, and emotional stress.
Yeah, and he gives some examples that I think you'll totally relate to.
So what kind of stuff are we talking about?
Okay, well, physical stress is pretty obvious, right? Like injuries, accidents, anything that puts a strain on your body.
Makes sense.
And then there's chemical stress.
Ooh, that sounds kind of scary.
It can come from stuff like, that extra glass of wine you had last night,
Oh no, busted.
or pollution, or even just eating a lot of processed foods.
Okay, so basically anything that kind of throws off your body's chemistry.
Right. And then, of course, there's the big one, emotional stress.
Hmm. Tell me about it.
Yeah, I think that's the one most of us are dealing with, like constantly deadlines at work, arguments with your partner. That feeling like you never have enough time. It all adds up.
It really does.
And this is where it gets interesting. Dr. Dispenza says that all three types of stress, no matter where they come from, ultimately disrupt your body's natural state of balance.
Balance is so when everything's working the way it should.
Exactly. He calls this balance homeostasis.
Homeostasis, that's a good word.
Yeah, you can kind of think of it like your body's internal thermostat, always trying to keep things running smoothly.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So even if I'm not running from a bear, just stressing about my to-do list can still throw my body out of whack.
That's exactly it. And get this, he says something like 75 to 90% of visits to healthcare providers are actually rooted in emotional or psychological stress.
Wait, are you serious? 90%. So we're talking most people going to the doctor are actually there because of stress.
Pretty much.
That's mind-blowing. So it's not just about broken bones or catching a cold. Our thoughts and feelings are playing a much bigger role in our health than most of us realize.
Absolutely. And the science backs it up.
Okay, tell me more.
So when we experience negative emotions like anger, anxiety, fear, our bodies react by releasing these hormones like cortisol and adrenaline.
Yeah, those stress hormones, everyone's always talking about them.
Rightfully so.
But why are they so bad? I mean, aren't they supposed to help us deal with stress?
Well, yeah, they're designed to help us cope with threats. It's how we evolved. Imagine you're back in the Stone Age, suddenly face to face with a saber-toothed tiger. Your body pumps out these hormones to give you a burst of energy to either fight or flee.
Yeah.
Super useful in that kind of life or death situation.
Okay, I get it. But most of us aren't dodging saber-toothed tigers on our way to work. So what happens when our bodies are constantly flooded with these stress hormones, even if the threat is just in our heads?
That's the problem. Our bodies haven't quite caught up to modern life. In the short term, these hormones are helpful. But over time, that constant state of high alert can lead to all sorts of issues. We're talking chronic inflammation, a weakened immune system, even an increased risk for things like heart disease and diabetes.
So it's like my body is stuck in fight or flight mode, even when I'm just stuck in traffic. No wonder I feel exhausted all the time.
Exactly. And here's the crazy part. Dr. Dispenza says our bodies don't actually know the difference between a real threat and a perceived one.
A perceived threat. So I'm not really in danger, but my brain is acting like I am.
Exactly. Let's say you're about to give a big presentation at work. Even though it's not physically dangerous, your mind might conjure up all these worst-case scenarios.
Oh yeah, I know that feeling.
Your heart races, your palms sweat, your body's reacting as if you're facing a real physical threat.
Okay, yeah, this is starting to make sense. I remember this one time I was so worried about a job interview that I actually got a stomach ache. Now I'm realizing that was probably my body reacting to my anxious thoughts.
It very well could have been. And when this kind of stress response is triggered over and over again by things we're simply thinking about or imagining, it takes a toll.
So we're basically stressing ourselves sick.
That's Dr. Dispenza's point. And it gets even weirder. He actually says we can get addicted to our own negative thoughts.
Addicted to negative thoughts. Now that sounds kind of crazy. How does that even work?
Well, think about it. Every time we have a stressful thought, our body releases those stress hormones, right? And even though it doesn't feel good in the long run, that surge of energy can become familiar. It's almost like any other addiction. Our body gets used to that chemical rush, even if it's ultimately harmful.
Hmm. So it's like my brain is craving those stress hormones, even though they're making me feel all anxious and run down.
Exactly. And like breaking any bad habit, it takes conscious effort to shift away from those negative thought patterns.
So what's the antidote? If we're literally wiring our brains for stress, how do we rewire them for something healthier?
Well, Dr. Dispenza talks about managing our attention and energy. It's about making a conscious choice to shift our focus toward more positive emotions.
Okay, so like thinking happy thoughts.
It can be that simple. And one of the most powerful tools he mentions is cultivating gratitude.
Gratitude. So like just making a list of things I'm thankful for.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just some feel-good mumbo-jumbo, there's actual research behind it. Dr. Dispenza even cited a study where people who practice gratitude for just a few days a week saw a significant boost in their immune system, like a 50% increase in immunoglobulin A, which is a key antibody.
Wait, a 50% increase? Just from thinking about things they were grateful for. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But how does that even work? Is it really just about thinking happy thoughts?
It's a bit more nuanced than that. He talks about this idea of programming the autonomic nervous system. Basically, by consistently focusing on positive emotions, we're essentially teaching our bodies to relax, to shift out of that constant state of stress and into a state of healing and well-being.
So instead of my thoughts sending me into a stress spiral, I can use them to actually promote healing in my body. It's like having a superpower I never knew about.
It is a pretty powerful concept, and it's available to all of us.
I mean, this is all starting to make a lot of sense. But even 15 minutes of gratitude a day sounds like a challenge sometimes. Life gets in the way.
I hear ya. It's not always easy. But what's interesting is that Dr. Dispenza doesn't say we need to become these perfect beings who never experience a negative emotion again. It's more about recognizing those thoughts and feelings, but not letting them control us.
So it's about acknowledging the negative,
Yeah.
but not getting stuck in it. It's about choosing where to focus my energy and using it to create something better.
Exactly. And the
Yeah.
more we do that, the easier it becomes. It's like building a muscle. The more we practice shifting our attention towards gratitude and positivity, the stronger those neural pathways become.
Okay, so it's not about being happy all the time. It's about building the mental fitness to handle whatever life throws at me. I like that.
This whole idea reminds me of something you probably already do existing. Mindfulness. Have you ever tried mindfulness exercises?
I've dabbled, but I'm not sure I'm doing it right. It seems like the
Huh.
moment I try to quiet my mind, it's like a popcorn machine in there.
That's super common. But mindfulness isn't about stopping your thoughts altogether. It's more about observing them without judgment, like watching clouds drift by. And in a way, that's what Dr. Dispenza is talking about too. Noticing those negative thought patterns, but not getting swept away by them.
So instead of trying to force myself to think positive all the time, it's about creating space between those thoughts and my reactions to them.
Exactly. And in that space, that pause, we can choose a different response. It's where we can break free from old unhealthy habits and start to create new, healthier ways of being.
So instead of spiraling into anxiety when something goes wrong, I can actually take a breath, acknowledge the feeling, and then choose how I want to respond.
That's the idea. And it takes practice, but over time, it can have a profound impact on our well-being.
This is all great, but is there any real science to back this up? Or is it just anecdotal
Oh,
stuff?
no, this is like a real area of research. There's actually a growing body of research exploring this mind-body connection, and the findings are fascinating.
Like what kind of research? What are we talking about here?
Well, one of the most well-known examples is the placebo effect. Where people experience real improvements in their symptoms simply because they believe they're receiving a treatment.
Yeah, the placebo effect. It's
I-
wild.
It really is. And it's not just about subjective feelings either. Researchers have observed measurable changes in things like brain activity hormone levels, even immune function.
So our beliefs and expectations can actually have a real impact on our bodies. That's crazy.
And then there's all the research on stress and its impact on the immune system. We know that chronic stress weakens our immune response, making us more susceptible to everything from colds to more serious illnesses.
Yeah, that makes sense. When I'm stressed out, I definitely get sick more easily. So if I can learn to manage my stress better, could I actually boost my immune system?
That's what the research suggests. And there's even research suggesting that positive emotions like gratitude and compassion can actually benefit our cardiovascular health.
Wait, really? Being kind and grateful is good for my heart.
It seems that way. Studies have shown that people who practice gratitude regularly tend to have lower blood pressure and a reduced risk of heart disease.
Wow. So it's like we've been so focused on like external solutions for health,
Hmm.
medications, treatments that we've forgotten about the incredible power we have within ourselves.
It's like we've been looking for answers in all the wrong places. Dr. Dispenza's work and the research that supports it reminds us that we are not just passive recipients of health or illness.
We can actually take an active part in creating well-being for ourselves. This
Exactly.
has been like a total mind-blowing deep dive. We started by exploring the different types of stress and how even small stressors can like throw off our body's balance.
Yeah, and that statistic about most doctor visits being related to stress was pretty eye-opening.
For sure. It really highlights how much our thoughts and emotions are tied to our physical health.
Totally.
Then we talked about how we can actually become addicted to negative thoughts. But luckily, Dr. Dispenza gives us some tools to break free from that cycle.
He really emphasizes the power of managing our attention and choosing to focus on positive emotions like gratitude.
And we even explored some of the scientific evidence that supports these ideas, like the placebo effect and the impact of stress on the immune system.
It's all pretty amazing when you think about it.
So what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away from this?
Hmm, that's a good question. If your thoughts can make you sick, just imagine what they can do if you consciously direct them towards health and healing.
That's a great point. It's like we have this incredible power within us. Well, thanks for joining us on this journey into the fascinating world of thoughts and health. We hope you learned some cool stuff and feel empowered to use your mind to create a healthier and happier you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.